for my small but growing audience. This is my friend Cory. Why don't you've racked up a pretty healthy looking bio, I think, over the last few years. You want to tell people what you're doing now and maybe like mention a bit of what you've been doing for the last few years?
Sure. Honestly, now much like a lot of people, I don't have a lot going on,
Right.
clarinet wise. Some of the opportunities that have come through have not really been worth pursuing because I have a small child. Going out of town for a couple $100 is not going to cut it anymore because it creates more problems than it's worth. So there it is. Like, as I said, mostly my son turned 4 yesterday. So, for the past year or so, I've really been focused on being a dad and, developing other, non-clarinet skills, like, return to playing the guitar.
Nice.
And, kind of riffing, and I don't know, songwriting would be a generous way of saying it, but, noodling on the guitar. Got into sourdough baking like so many. Did some gardening, and been getting into disc golf like once a week. So actually, hobbies, like what a concept. That was something I just didn't have time for a lot of years.
Right.
But prior to that, we also just moved to San Francisco, the city of San Francisco, at the end of the year. And the year before that, we relocated from Chicago after I lived there for 17 years. I'm from the area. We lived in Walnut Creek, which is in the East Bay suburban area, the San Francisco Bay Area, where my wife is the executive director of the California Symphony. So we left for that opportunity. And when we first moved, I had been subbing. I'm kind of guest principaling with the Modesto Symphony in the Central Valley area for like 5 or 6 years. They would just kind of send me dates, and because the woodwind players like me and the personnel manager like me, would just say, "Hey, here's our season." But the last couple of years, what can you do? And I would say, I can do something in January or February. Sounds really nice to get out of Chicago. So I would come once, maybe twice a year for that. And then I just started taking everything. Once I realized we were moving, I was like, just give me all of that.
Right.
And I'd started playing with Stockton Symphony, which isn't far from there, and quickly became their first call sub. And then I started playing with the Oakland Symphony, and then they hired me for the rest of their season. I know their principal clarinetist, Bill Kalinkos. He's the clarinetist for Alarm Will Sound, but I know him from the New Hampshire Music Festival because the co-principal clarinet is a friend of mine, and he had me out to bail him out on short notice to cover for him. And I met Bill through that. So I said, "Hey, Bill, can you get me on the sub list?" And then I passed the test with the ladies of the section, and they booked me for the rest of the season. Then, of course, so, between that and then my job, I'm principal clarinet in the Las Vegas Philharmonic for 10 years this fall. Between those gigs and being, responsible for a young one, the last couple of weeks before the pandemic, I was doing like 2 orchestra gigs a week for like 3 weeks in a row. And I started picking up some other little stuff, like a chamber opera thing, another little opera thing around town, around the suburbs. I was all looking up. And then I was supposed to go to Monterey to play with the symphony for a week. And then that was the week that everything shut down.
Yeah.
So, I imagine eventually I'll get back on that freeway fill circuit, which, by the way, the Bay Area, that's where the freeway Philharmonic term actually comes from. And it makes a lot of sense if you're out here. It's all the same people, and there's so many orchestras, and it's like this whole community. It's it's actually really cool, and everybody like carpools and everybody knows each other. It's pretty neat. It's not like any other place I've been, for sure. So before we moved, I was also teaching at Loyola University for several years. Taught like methods at DePaul for a few years. I covered a sabbatical at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, that we called like an artist in residence stint there for a while. I taught at Chicago High School for the Arts. I was their first clarinet teacher and developed a 3-year clarinet techniques curriculum. I taught the People's Music School and did the Yours project of, I think, first El Sistema Nucleo, possibly in the United States in like 2009, 2010, 2011, around then. I was second clarinet in the Illinois Symphony for a while, and then principal clarinet in Green Bay for a few years. And when I was, the last few years in Chicago in particular, I was freelancing very heavily up there. I had been runner-up in the second clarinet audition for the Elgin Symphony, which was a grueling 5-round, 2-day experience for the Elgin Symphony. That's where things are in this field now. That's a 2-day audition with 5 rounds. But yeah, as I said, I got runner-up, and they asked us both back afterwards because they were very happy with both of us. And then they only have 2 clarinet positions, so I ended up getting asked to play almost every concert for a couple of years. Got to sub principal even, like Polovetzian dances and stuff. So I was doing that, and then I'm still technically a member of the Chicago Philharmonic, which is it's an interesting organization because people are like performing members. And I think they sort of have principals, but it's not totally clear to me. I haven't served on committees. It's like kind of musician run. They do have an administration, and they do to some degree like follow like the Berlin Phil model. I don't know as much about it as I should. I just subbed with them enough times and that I was invited to be a member. And so that was cool. I got to do like, American Ballet Theater tour, playing like Strauss, Whipped Cream, Schlagerbergs on like bass clarinet and second C clarinet because Strauss, and like played at the, what's that thing called? Pitchfork Midwinter Festival at the Art Institute, like with William Basinski, and a bunch of hipsters were crying in the audience. And, so I had some interesting experiences and some subscription concerts too with them. And other freelancing things around the Chicago area. And I subbed pretty routinely, much like Elgin, but for several years, like 7 years. I was sort of like a de facto extra member of the Kalamazoo Symphony, and went out there quite a bit and subbed and played every chair at some point, and I mean, I've gotten around the country and played with a lot of different groups and done some master classes, and that pretty much sums it up.
Nice. Well, it's cool to hear all the stuff you've been into. I don't know if I'd have the patience to be traveling that much to all those different places. I mean, we both enjoy to play, but that seems like a lot of like in between stuff,
there's something to talk about there. When I was in my early and mid 20s, I got tired of not really getting any work in Chicago. And then the work I was getting was like, nominal pay, really. And it was kind of infuriating. So I wanted to play. I wanted to figure out a way to make, some kind of modest living on music, on clarinet. So I started traveling, and, it kind of peaked in 2015. It started to become a problem basically once I got into my 30s, because it was like, well, Cory's never in town. So, it had become, instead of like, young and inexperienced, it started to become like, yeah, plenty of experience, but he's always out of town. And so then in 2015, I spent 3 summers in a row, but that was my third summer doing 3 months at the Utah Shakespeare Festival, which was like a vacation gig for a musician because it was 4 shows a week on a salary, and they give you an apartment, and you're like in this incredibly beautiful spot in southwestern Utah, like by Zion and Bryce Canyon. Is pretty fantastic. But anyway, I did that, and then immediately had 4 months teaching at UNLV with 2 weeks of absolute hell where I was doing both. And on the other 5 months of 2015, I think I was gone half the time. And it just, after, I was 30 at that point, and at the end of that year, I just kind of decided that I couldn't do it anymore. And I turned down the festival that summer, and I started prioritizing being home and trying to get work at home. And my wife got pregnant that summer too, so that helped to motivate me to get work at home. And so then, from that point forward, I was home more and more. I was subbing out of Las Vegas more and more. I would still maybe go to California once because my sister lives in San Francisco, so I'd find an excuse to come visit, usually on the heels of a Las Vegas trip or just before or something like that. But yeah, that really did wind down a lot, and I'm no longer interested in doing that. And that's one of the nice things about the Bay Area is like there's a lot of work within an hour or two of here.
Yeah.
So if you can get plugged in, you don't really have to leave town. Yeah. So yeah, I definitely, I don't regret doing all that per se, but it definitely got old for me. But it was cool to be able to cut my teeth and play like union gigs, and feel, be able to get those experiences and find some respect, without having to just sit around and twiddle my thumbs and serve lattes.
Right.
Which was fine. I did that, but I just didn't want to do it anymore,
Well, lattes can be delicious,
They can.
Sure. It's good to hear, the kind of outlining a bit of your career, because part of the audience I want to hit, it's of course, our clarinet peers, but also I have a thing for kind of the up and coming musician crowd. And I like for everyone to be able to see like what people have gone through to build the careers they have at this point, and then certainly now I don't know if we're post, but like, the COVID era, like what things are evolving into for people, I've talked to a lot of peers in like school band and stuff like that. Like, okay, well, everything's on Zoom now. How do we cope with that? And how did we build to this point? I like sharing everyone's value. And I'm hoping people get something out of it to build their own careers. So let's see. I'm a little scattered. We haven't seen each other in a while, so there's a lot I'd like to dig into. Your kid is 4 now?
Yeah. I don't think I've seen you since he was born.
Yeah. It's been too long. Everyone I've talked to, it's been too long, but yeah, you've brought another human in. That's a big milestone. Is there, other than, let's say, other than kind of geographically settling down, can you describe any other aspects of your guys' lives that have changed? Like, now that you have an offspring.
Sure. Well, so when we were in Chicago, my brother lived in town. We had a lot of, friends, longtime friends. My parents live, an hour and a half outside of town. So we had a lot of support with with raising my son. And actually freelancing was really, I mean, it was hard, don't get me wrong, but it was a great fit for being the primary caretaker of a child in a way, because I could still, I could still scratch out a living, even though I would, also wanted to scratch out my eyes sometimes.
Yeah.
I was able to scratch out a living and piece together, childcare and make baby food and change diapers, and even climb the freelance ladder in Chicago all at the same time. And, it's every bit as hard as it sounds and more, but, it's just it's one of those things you have to do to understand. I don't know. It's so hard to explain, but it can be like, someone once described to me having kids as it's like the best worst thing ever and the worst best thing ever. Like, it's really wonderful, but it's very challenging. It certainly has helped me. I'm glad that we waited until we were in our 30s. It would have been, in some ways, I would have had more energy certainly when I was a little younger, but I think I have a little more patience and wisdom now. And I was able to pursue a lot of the things I wanted to pursue career-wise and interest-wise first, and establish a reputation and all that. So anyway, now that we've moved out here, we don't really have any support. And then that was really blown up by the pandemic, of course. So that has been a different challenge. And even those 2.5 months where I was working before the pandemic started, the logistics were definitely pretty tough. Because, as you can imagine, being the executive director of an orchestra is a pretty demanding job. A lot of pressure, and you tend to be understaffed in the arts. So the logistics of that were pretty tricky. But he's in preschool now, in the mornings. The upside of me not working was, we don't have 2 grocery bills. Because I'm out of town or whatever, and like, we're not eating out all the time because I'm here, and we can buy groceries and like actually make 3 meals a day if we want. And I'm not out like socializing, after work, and I'm not spending a bunch of money on gas, and I'm not buying flights, and I'm not really spending money on tons of clarinet gear and so on and so forth. So it's all kind of balanced out, I would say, but it's definitely, I see a lot of colleagues who are like 2 musicians who are married. And I think that, I'm lucky my wife is, in a salaried administrative job. A lot of musicians are together and who have kids, and a lot of them are in very, tight situations where they've had to get a bit more creative to make ends meet, whereas I've just been sort of able to lean into like, okay, well, he was going to daycare a couple days a week in Chicago because I started getting too busy the last year I was there to make it work with friends and family all the time. And we said, okay, well, we're not going to put him in daycare, we're not going to put him in preschool, because I'm right here and I might as well raise my own kid. But you do have to have some sort of an income. So I definitely feel for a lot of my colleagues who have had to go through some really rough times. It was more of an adjustment period for us. Like, finances were a little tight because we just moved across the country, and a lot of unknowns and a lot of purchases need to be made and yada, yada. But, things kind of stabilized. And, that giant unemployment check for the first, the first few months was really helpful. But, things are fine now. And, again, I'm very grateful for that, and feel for our colleagues who have had to be more resourceful.
Yeah. No, I mean, in my own patchwork career, I've been working around education a lot. Particularly the last few years, I've actually been in a preschool setting, like preschool slash daycare for at least part time. Um, that's, I mean, so let me put it this way: the the challenges you have with your single child right now. Imagine 20 of them in a room, and all the kids' parents have to be at work. They're stuck there till sometimes after closing hours. Um, I mean, that's a lot of young humanity to manage.
That is one way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like for me, um, it informed me a lot about grown up life a lot more. Like it showed me how little we were actually different from kids, like at the core of
Mhm.
things. We want things and we don't get them, we get upset. um the whole layer of kind of social management and etiquette and things, like underlying all of that, we're just all preschoolers with bigger bodies. I don't know, it's interesting.
More
And
cunning, more cunning minds.
yeah, and the potty stuff only comes out when we get too drunk. um I've had to eat. I'm a male teacher, so I've tried to not deal with too much potty stuff outside of the eyes of my co-teachers and all that.
Right.
But yeah, that's a lot to manage. So good luck to you as your child grows older and develops. I have some small idea of what you've been going through developmentally, but
Oh yeah, I'm sure you do. One of the things as a parent on a day to day is they're like little mirrors in a lot of ways. So you see them doing things, or you hear them saying things that you don't like. And I mean, it could be from school, but most of the time it's not. Most of the time, you know exactly where it came from, and it can be humbling to realize. You're like, oh, I gotta. You see yourself a bit more clearly when through the eyes of a child, I think.
yeah. Oh, it's fun. Let me let me come back around to clarinet stuff, since I suppose that's the premise of this show in the first place. Um, how did you get started in clarinet in the first place?
I started in clarinet when I was, let's see, how old was I? 10. I think I was 10. And, you know, it was very typical, like band director came around, played all the instruments, and then like a month or so later, there was a trial session. And if you were interested, you could go down during whatever class period you were assigned and try some instruments and pick your top three. And, you know, obviously they're looking for a lot of clarinet players for the band. I was a very typical little boy and I wanted to play drums or sax. And they said, well, you have to have a year of piano to play percussion. So that was out. And when I tried to play the saxophone, I couldn't make a sound. So that was out. They said, well, you can play clarinet and switch. And I was like, no, I can't do it. It's not happening. So I could make a sound on the clarinet and I liked it. And same, trumpet was my number 3 choice. Clarinet was actually my second choice. My first choice was the oboe because they hyped up how hard it was. And I picked it up and I could just like get all these notes out, like no problem. And I went home and I said, Mom, I want to play the oboe. And she looked at me like, the oboe? So you can't play the oboe. That thing sounds like a damn duck. And so, okay, well, I guess I'll play the clarinet. And that's literally kind of how it went down. And then, you know, so I started playing, and at first, you know, I was just another kid in band. And then after a couple of years, started to notice more of an aptitude. And, the high school band director was a clarinet player, and she heard me play when I was in 7th grade and asked me if I was interested in taking some lessons. And then once I started taking lessons, you know, my abilities just started exploding. And so from that point on, at about 13, I kind of decided I wanted to be a clarinet player. So, took it seriously, practiced every day. I also started playing saxophone when I was 12 for jazz band, I still do once in a great while. But played that through high school. And then I, won a local concerto competition for high schoolers when I was with the community orchestra in town, the Illinois Valley Symphony, when I was 15. And my parents bought me my first professional horn after that, buffet festival. And yeah, that, off to the races, went to school. Didn't always have the easiest time at school, but made it through. Took some breaks, after school. I took a break for a long time, and then just came back to my basics and, long tones, scales, all the stuff, you learn all these tools, and built my playing back up. And then that was when I auditioned for and won Illinois Symphony job, the second clarinet job, after several month hiatus. So
let me go back real quick. Your school experience, was it the school part that was hard, or was it the playing part, or is there any way you want to elaborate on that a little bit, or is it?
Sure. I mean, school itself, I went to DePaul, and the level of playing there was really high. So that part was great. I showed up, and, the guys who were tops were, one of them made it to finals for principal in San Francisco Symphony that year. Another one of them won and is still the principal clarinet in the Quebec Symphony. And the other one is a good friend who, has a lot of positions. I mentioned New Hampshire, and he's in Fifth House Ensemble in Chicago, and all kinds of stuff. So, I had, in that aspect, it was great. There's fantastic faculty. Really, the bar was really high. It was the top that I was aiming for there was obviously competitive at the top level in auditions as well. So that was great. What was problematic for me was the politics of the place. I didn't, coming from a small town, I wasn't necessarily prepared for that aspect of things. But perhaps more problematic was just in my personal life. I had a terminally ill sister. So I spent the first couple of years of college, with my sister's condition deteriorating, and then she eventually passed away just before my junior year. So that really impacted those years for me and made it a lot more challenging than it might otherwise have been to just simply get through my degree and make healthy choices and all of that. But, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And, I still learned a lot there. I didn't burn every bridge, I mended some other fences, and I'm sure there's other fences that I'll find to mend as the years go by.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean, we can't control the timing of big events in our lives, but to have heavy things happen in those college years, the young adult, years is that's extra heavy. But yeah, on the other side of it, you have to move forward. Time keeps going anyways.
Right.
And how we move forward. You know, I think you've shown how well you've done that. But let's see. What made you, or how did you end up at DePaul? Is that where you were set? Like you wanted to go there primarily, or do you just kind of do the like cast a wide net and see what see what stuck?
I was pretty set on it, but I mean, I auditioned. I got in everywhere. I auditioned everywhere I applied, I should say. I auditioned in Indiana, DePaul, University of Iowa, Wesleyan, Illinois Wesleyan, Millikan,
Okay.
and Northern Illinois. And Millikan and Northern offered me full scholarships. Wesleyan offered me like 5/6, I want to say.
That's a interesting proportion.
Yeah, it was between academic and what they had to offer for music. U of Iowa was like something like 3/4. Indiana gave some modest scholarship, but based on how my lesson went out there when I was a senior, I had lost all interest in going there, and that's all I have to say about that. But I had wanted to study with Julie and John Ye and Larry Combs in particular. Since I was a kid, I played on the Larry Combs mouthpiece, in high school.
I remember those.
Yeah, right. So, which, shock and surprise, that's not what he was playing on. But so he was like kind of my idol when I was a kid, so even though I didn't get as big of a scholarship there, which is like a whole different story. My audition, there's a whole different story, but an interesting experience. But anyway, that was really just where I wanted to go. And, somebody at Northern was trying to convince me to go there, and they said, we're offering you a full scholarship. Is DePaul offering you that? And I was like, well, no. And I said, well, why would you want to go there? And I said, well, I mean, parenthetically, because the faculty at DePaul is like all the Chicago Symphony and lyric opera people, and I want to play in an orchestra. But I didn't say that. I said location, 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 which sort of implies that. And so I took on some debt to do that instead. But, that's how I got to be around that level of competition. And that's how I got to study with those clarinetists. And that's how I got to play in master classes with other clarinetists from other orchestras around the world. And that's how I got to, play an orchestra with under Cliff Colnott, who, was basically just regurgitating, Barenboim and Boulez. And I got to study chamber music with like Ilya Kahler and Steve Balderston, and also with Larry, and all these other amazing musicians, and learned a lot about music and about good string playing also. And, like there's a lot to know, and I think it was just the right environment. If I truly wanted to be a clarinetist, I felt like I needed to aim high and take that risk. And it felt, I didn't have help really from my parents financially. So maybe some book money, which is really a drop in the bucket. But I just felt like, it felt between like what was going on in my personal life and then the financial strain, it was a constant struggle for sure. But ultimately it's led me to all the places that I've been, and I just kind of had faith and worked hard and made it happen.
Yeah, nice. That's important for people to hear. I think the amount of effort and sacrifice or difficulty you have to endure to really build the life you want. I don't think anything that's worth having is going to be terribly easy to get.
No.
But let me ask you this. Eventually we're all evolving. We're not the same people from whatever 20 years ago, but how drastic has that evolution been to this point, do you think?
Well, I think, first of all, I didn't ever go back to school. I needed a break after school for, at this point, I think understandable reasons, given what I told you. I thought I'll take a gap year, and here we are 14 years later. It's been a long gap year, but in place of a master's degree, I have a lot of experience, but also I spent a lot of years periodically taking lessons from people in orchestras, or people, known pedagogues. Like, over the years I've played for Yehuda Galad, I think 3 times. It's been a long time now, but people like Todd Levy and Milwaukee, and Steve Williamson, and Charlene Zimmerman, who's now retired from Lyric Opera and Grant Park Symphony, and Gene Collard, who's in principal in Elgin and assistant principal in bass in Grant Park. He became a bit of a mentor to me, actually, in those last few years in Chicago. I can't think of his name. He's principal in Dallas now, and he was in the New York Phil at the time.
Mark Nuccio.
You all know who I'm talking about.
Yeah,
that was a long time. I played for him.
Plugging. I'll edit in the name later in big glowing.
Yeah. Perfect. I played for him like a dozen years ago. But anyway, the point is, in Tad from Salt Lake City, from Utah Symphony. In just everywhere I went, not every time. Carrie Bell here in town. It's been years, but I played for him, principal in San Francisco Symphony years ago. Probably should do that again now that I live here. But anyway, these exchanges helped me reassess things, I think, and gave me other perspectives. And ultimately, every musician, at the end of the day, you are your own teacher, your own ears. And you have to, obviously you need outside guidance to be the best you can be. And you can't literally watch yourself in real time and point things out. And you can't replicate the experience of a master on your own. So, you definitely need to be taught for many years, but once you get to a certain point, you definitely become your primary teacher. So you have to, at that point, you have to decide, what you've learned, what really works for you, what serves you, and how you want to play, versus what changes need to be made to make you the best player you can be. So I'm a big proponent of I think articulation, fingers, embouchure, I think for the most part there's one way, but there's subtle nuance to all of this. And I think, I think it's important to always listen to and try what a teacher tells you, even if you don't agree, and to just sort of keep your mouth shut about it.
Yeah.
And try it. And I, with rare exception, I did always do that. And I regret when I didn't, and I've always given that advice to my students too. But some teachers are very hard and fast about do it this way. This is the way. Mm-hmm. And I've had teachers like that, and other teachers are more open-minded. I tend to be more open-minded about, especially interpretation of things. Mm-hmm. And even that has been confirmed when I've played for, principal players in major orchestras. They say, oh, that, I like what you're doing. that's, why don't I show you what I do? Or Tad in Utah Symphony had a great point. I came in and played excerpts, and he's like, you sound great. Said, but if you get to the final rounds in a big audition, you have to be prepared to play it a different way like that. So his advice to me was, it's great that you can play it that way, but can you play it this way? And he would just ask me to do things differently. Like, what if a conductor, so it was like, he almost like mock audition style, like did this to me. Like, what if a conductor asks you to play it like this? Can you play it like that? And suggested, in addition to the way you really want to play it, maybe have like some other ideas and have some other ways of doing it kind of prepared, so that if you're asked to play it differently, whether in an audition or in, on the job, that you're able to do it on a dime. And that's sort of that's one of those things that distinguishes people at the top, is that ability to be flexible and make fast changes to the way that you are interpreting something.
That's fun to hear. There's a lot of similar ideas in the martial arts world. I don't know how much you've kept up, but I have a martial arts school. The show is Clarinet Dojo, but like there's very much the same idea about, regardless of style, like at the highest levels, like you have to be able to adapt to, in that case, it's an opponent, but you could view it similarly, like, the person with whom you're having the interaction, to be able to adapt, because otherwise it's force against force, and if neither person adapts, you just run each other into the ground. But yeah, I enjoy hearing these, because it seems like regardless of who I talk to, like a lot of these similar truths come out about, the whole world of playing, and then, as connected to martial arts, kind of secondary. But yeah, you can't always just set yourself one way and then expect to just plow through everything.
It's certainly not going to serve anyone best in their lives to be indignant about one way of doing things. There's nothing really constant in life. Like, change is the only constant. So if you're not moving with that current, it tends to just bring a lot of misery, honestly, in my experience.
And then again, some people like that. I enjoy it every once in a while, just to, poke at people a little bit, but probably not the best choice as like an overall lifestyle.
Sure, I can relate to that.
Oh man, let's see. Now it sounds like you've done quite a bit as an orchestral clarinetist. As far as repertoire, like, is there what's some particular orchestral repertoire that just really really gets to you? I mean, it's great fun to play, whatever, it's a great privilege to play at all, but what's stuff that you really like?
Stuff that I really like. I mean, I love playing lyrical solos, like that's, not that it isn't rewarding to play the more technical solos. I love playing Brahms symphonies, some of the Tchaikovsky, though, that has more technical stuff as well. I love playing Mahler symphonies, though. Those are just so much fun. I don't know. I think the joy of it for me is more in making the music with other people than in like a particular solo, or it's always gratifying to play the big excerpts. I will say that, like, you spend all this time, like, Capriccio Espagnol. It's like how many hours I spent in college, like shedding those ridiculous excerpts and like learning to smooth out the register break and all that. And it was good work. It's great to do. But then, you know, I psych myself up and then I finally play it and I'm like, this is just like uproariously fun, actually. Like once you get over being terrified of it, it's incredibly fun. Like I would play that any day. It's a party. Like it's a party and you're like the guy on the table like at the party, like just going nuts. It's fantastic. It's super fun. Whereas in my personal view, playing the Mendelssohn Scherzo still feels pretty rough. Like it's like, oh, it's still kind of just, and there's a collective tension because everybody's doing it together. So every time I've played, I haven't played it a ton of times, so I've played it several, and every time I play it, it's always the same experience of like collective tension, you know, like everyone's really like, oh shit. But anyway, what I really enjoy more than anything is like a beautiful woodwind trio, or like, you know, the opening to like Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto, where the first clarinet is playing in unison with the entire cello section. Like that, you know, it's not like the most glorious thing in terms of like, you know, I'm going to stand and take this big bow. I mean, you get that big solo in the next movement. That's beautiful. But like that feeling of blending all those sounds together in real time, to me, that's the best part, is truly just making music.
Yeah. I've tried to grasp at that myself. A lot of these questions are things I've tried to ask myself over the years, but like you're right. It's that sense of community, like you're building something together, creating something together. I mean, you know, I guess proportionally, like I was made to do try to learn a lot of solo repertoire. I'm sure everyone who goes to school for clarinet, you have to, but you know, like there's a point like I wanted to share an experience with people, you know. I think now that's why I lean more towards like chamber music. There's a certain level of intimacy you get to enjoy, even with the audience size. Like it always seems like a little kind of closer experience. But that's good. I mean, it's better than just saying like, oh, Mozart concerto because I play clarinet, you know, and then that's, you know, check the box for other clarinet nerds out there.
You know, playing the Mozart concerto is a fantastic experience. I've been lucky to do that twice professionally. And I mean, definitely that's a fantastic experience. It is. It's a great piece of music is the thing, like objectively, like not just like I'm a biased clarinet nerd.
Right.
That is objectively one of the greatest pieces that Mozart wrote. He wrote a lot, don't get me wrong. A lot of stuff he wrote was really, really excellent, but that piece is very special and we're very fortunate to have it in our repertoire. But I tend to agree with you. Like a lot of my best experiences have been either in chamber music or when orchestral playing felt like chamber music, because it was that on or that together. And that's the experience that I think most people are going for, you know, like that's kind of why we got into this, was for that sensation of everything locking in. It's just sort of this ineffable thing, you know, like it's hard to even explain what it feels like unless you've been there. And that actually, as you know, that's the other aspect of what I did in my 20s was ran an eclectic chamber ensemble in Chicago back when I didn't have a lot of gigs, but I did have time. And we did a concert like every, I don't know, 3.5 weeks, something like 20 concerts in our first season. And did that for, I don't know, 5 to 7 years. Fewer concerts after that first year, but that was also part of building my chops too. Like, you know, learning extended techniques for new music concerts and, learning chamber music repertoire, playing, and honestly programming stuff I wanted to play and learn.
Mhm.
And it made me a better musician, I think, so that when I took these orchestral auditions, it honestly helped to like have this chamber music experience, I think, in place of all the orchestral experience I definitely didn't have.
Yeah.
I was a band kid growing up, hardcore. I really didn't play in orchestra outside of IMEA or ILMEA, they call it now. My junior and senior year. Other than that, and playing a concerto with the orchestra when I was 15, like that was about it. It's all band.
Yeah. Have you how much playing have you done like out of the country? Uh,
A little bit, not much. After school, I went over to France for a while and lived there, and I played some concerts in France, some chamber music concerts. Um,
I feel like the culture is different there. I mean, I don't see, like America, we have such a big like wind ensemble type culture. Um, and it seems more orchestra oriented, at least where I've been over there. Like,
mhm.
like the one time I played in Germany a few years ago. Well, a few. I'm so old now. Many, many more years ago than it feels like. Um, they were like enamored that the winds could actually keep up with the strings, and it made me kind of wonder, like, what's at first I was like, why, like they don't do the bands like we do, and apparently they don't. Like
Right.
winds
Well,
is,
but we don't do orchestra like they do
yeah,
for kids, and that's, I mean, it's not. It's why a lot of the wind players in orchestras all over the world are often American. Not always, but often. And a lot of the string players in orchestras all over the world are often European or perhaps Asian.
yeah,
Plenty of Americans, and I think that's gotten better over time. But I mean, back in the day, it was all like Russian and like European immigrants playing in American string sections, So I don't think that's, I think it's a matter of education, like with the education systems, music education systems within those continents and countries.
yeah. I'm not keyed in so much abroad anymore, but I feel like we've developed a lot more as far as like the string and orchestra learning here. Um, so we'll see what the music culture looks like in the next few decades as a result.
Right.
Let's see. I get real clarinet nerdy on you now. What gear are you playing on? Because somebody's gonna wonder that.
Oh, sure. On my bass clarinet, I haven't played in so long. I'm like, what do I play on?
Yeah.
On a B40 with Rovner Platinum. And I have a C star that Ramon Waldkowski worked on for me and shipped to me here. And I honestly haven't tried it because I just haven't really played the bass clarinet at all. I did a little bit, but I didn't. I just didn't. I mean, I had some gigs, but I didn't have time when we first moved. It was just like I just didn't have time to mess with it between being a dad and just prepping for the gigs and every day. It was like, I'll worry about that when I have some time, maybe in the summer or whatever, when things slow down a little. But I imagine I'll like that Waldkowski, and I use a Waldkowski custom. I'm on my second one for my B flat as well, and I've been very happy with that. And I use just the basic model of the Silverstein ligature,
Okay.
or just a classic bonade, like not the inverted, but the regular bonade.
Yes.
I have like a vintage one, and like you can you have to find the old ones. The new ones are not as good. But like David Tuttle in Chicago has like probably 20 of them. I think he sold to me.
Yeah.
I
Swipe them up when you see them. That kind of.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I used to live down the street. I think I like rode my bike over there and bought it for $5, and I end up playing on that thing as often as not.
I I used to play on like a classic Bernard like that, and I stopped because of this. Because every time I set up, it would pull out hair, and like, well, I kind of like my hair, like that's one of one of my small points of vanity I hang on to. Like, I spent a lot of years telling me or people telling me I'm supposed to police my facial hair a certain way, and then now that's my continuing sign of rebellion against my past.
Sure.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I definitely got a lot of chin hairs caught in my banana. Sure.
but yeah, no, it's nice. It's now what is it about that? Was it the Silverstein? Like, can you describe what it is that you like about it?
I'm trying to remember what I was playing on before that. I think I was playing on a custom mouthpiece by uh, Lee Livengood, the bass clarinetist in
Oh,
Utah Symphony.
yeah, I didn't know he made stuff.
He does. Well, he actually designed the D'Addario X 0 through 10 or whatever, 0,
Wow.
5, and 10.
All right.
Yeah, he designed those, and it was around that time when those came out. And I went over to his house and played for him, and I ended up purchasing a custom mouthpiece that he made. He's very into refacing vintage stuff. I think that's his favorite, if I remember correctly. And then I don't remember what ligature I was on, but it might have been like an Optimum, Van Doren Optimum or something like that. And anyway, then I bought a Silverstein when I was teaching at UNLV, just kind of curious, and I put it on, and it was like the resonance was so incredible. Like it just, I don't know, it just felt and sounded great. And then what's funny is then later on, like I in Chicago, people play really loudly to keep up with that famous brass. So I found myself like, the Bernard ligature it's just louder. It's just louder. The Silverstein's like, it's a much like kind of fluffier sound, I want to say. Like it's a little more floaty. It's a nice sound. It's really beautiful. But I found myself needing like a little more power to keep up. So I ended up switching back to the Bernard. I just kind of kept it. It's also a little more forgiving with reeds.
Yeah. Let's see. That's another point too. What do you have a pet brand of reed right now, or make whatever?
I've been using the V12 cut forever. And I've been as high as 4.5 on that. That was probably a little too thick, but I spent a lot of time on 4s, and nowadays I use 3.5 or 3.5 plus. And it really all depends on your mouthpiece, right? I tend to like an open enough facing that I can use a thinner reed, which is going back to what you asked before. That's like not necessarily how I was taught. That's just what I've come to like. So I'm not always thrilled with them. I haven't tried everything, I did do some experimenting with D'Addarios, and I liked the response better, but it definitely didn't have the same core of sound. And they didn't seem to have the longevity either. They tended for me to warp a lot faster. So I pretty much just stick to V12s. And I wouldn't, who's happy with their reeds?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Have you spent much time on the plastics, the Leger, etc.?
No, actually, that's been a thought in my mind as I'm thinking. Excuse me. Of getting back into playing now that things are opening up and everything. It's You know, it's going to be more than just the occasional gig pretty soon here. I think I was thinking I should probably invest in some sort of a setup. I have some friends who sound great, who play almost exclusively on synthetics, with the exception of like, what is it, bass clarinet? I want to say they'll play like E flat, B flat on synthetics, and then on bass clarinet they'll use, and some people even use synthetic on bass clarinet too. I've used synthetic, but only when I was doubling in like a show and I needed to just pick up a horn and have it play.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
saxophone or bass clarinet, like if I'm playing mostly clarinet and like have to switch, it's
that's where I've like for my studio, I've tended to recommend synthetic stuff for like, hey, you're about to get into marching, or like God knows what environment you're going to be in, and just like at least you'll know like whatever this does, it's going to keep doing it until it can't anymore.
right.
I mean, and as hard as I've worked to try to prep reeds, like a box of cane reeds, like I still don't know exactly what they're going to do when I pull them out for the day until I start playing them. So I don't know. Yeah, if you're in a situation like that where just like, okay, it's sitting for half an hour and now I suddenly have to chime in on whatever instrument down there. Yeah, I was looking forward to the Clarinet Fest this year. I was going to venture out and like reacquaint myself with all the equipment, because it's completely different now from when I bought my gear. I feel rather like just outside of that bubble now. Like, but they switched it to all online format. So I don't know if there's how they're going to do vendors or anything like that, but
They rescheduled for Reno. I didn't even look.
it was going to be Dallas Fort Worth this year. I don't know about any of the other events from here on, but
Right.
yeah,
I intended to go to Reno actually in 2020 because it's 4 hours drive, maybe.
Right.
You know, I've never gone to Clarinet Fest, and I really wanted to try new horns because I'm pretty overdue for a new set of horns. My horns are, I think, 15 years old.
Yeah. Are you playing on the same stuff from before? Yeah, me too. I got yelled at from one of my instrument tech friends. Like, how are you even playing on this anymore? It's like, because I'm behind on like overhauls and like even basic maintenance. I'm lucky if I put some oil in there every once in a while. Like, I don't see any pads falling out, but man, yeah, I'm well overdue. But yeah, I'm just gonna keep an eye on the industry and see when the next big trade show is, because I mean it's not just like getting your own gear. It's like for me, like I want to know what I can recommend to a student now, because it's probably not going to be the same stuff that I used to be able to recommend.
Right.
Do you do any studio teaching at all? Is that any part of your career at this point?
I mean, it used to be. Since I've moved, I didn't really get a chance to establish myself. I taught in a master class, like a sort of like a mock audition. It was supposed to be a mock audition, but honestly, it was more like an excerpt master class with my colleagues in Las Vegas via Zoom for the university. And it just felt so good to talk about music. It's like I forgot how good it felt to just talk about phrasing and character and style, and even the nitty gritty of like tempos and just all the boring stuff like was super interesting to talk about because it's been so long. And I did have an interview. I didn't apply, just through word of mouth. Someone was referred to me, and there's a music academy in the suburbs here who was founded by a pianist who's a competition winner. Like wanted to settle down, and he's from that area in the East Bay. And there's another pianist who runs it now because the founder teaches in British Columbia at the university. And there's a string player who's in like concerto. He's a Dutch guy and all that. Mm. And he heard about me, and so he asked for a resume and stuff, and set up an interview. And he's trying to expand. So I was sort of expecting, because I was like, how much does this pay? And he was like, well, we should talk. And I was like, oh man. But
I know what that means.
Yeah, I was just not expecting what I got, because I was expecting like a pitch, like you should really think. But what I got was an invitation to basically sit at the table with some really tremendous musicians who are trying to build, like, they have something there, but they're trying to build it into something greater, and they're looking for collaborators. And so what I got was, an invitation to lunch when the founder flies into town, to sit down with these guys and, talk about like whether I want to be a part of, building this program into like a pre-conservatory training situation with the chamber music program, and eventually like a youth orchestra and stuff like that. So it sounds like I'm getting back into teaching after a hiatus, and I think that's been good for me. I started teaching lessons when I was 15, and I'm, 30, I just turned 36 over the weekend. So it was probably good after 20 years to.
Happy belated birthday, by the way. I had no idea that.
I'm not on Facebook, so nobody knows anymore.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Yeah. I don't think you're missing much.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah. I always feel like, everyone's attitudes about teaching are a little different. Like some people like really just want to play, it seems like. I've had a little more on the teaching side at this point. But everyone's proportions seem a little bit different. Do you foresee yourself keeping up and doing both, like finding some balance of doing both from here on, or is there one or the other you'd rather be doing given the chance?
Well, I always I was pretty indignant when I was younger that I didn't want to be just a private lesson teacher. Mm-hmm. And I did my fair share of that, but it was always very important to me that I prioritize the playing, and I wanted to do that more than teach. And I felt very strongly about that. And financially, it made my life a little harder, I think, in my 20s, early mid 20s, especially. But I think I'm glad that I prioritized that in a way, because then it led ultimately to more of a playing career for me, to where I could make that the primary thing that I do, and then teaching on the side. And that was just what felt right for me, And I think that's always going to be, for the most part, that'll probably always be the case for me, that I prefer to do playing, but I do like to teach. It's just, if I do it all the time, it drives me crazy.
I share that sentiment, and I've been doing, maybe that's something I need to reconsider more with how I proportion my time, because it sounds like you've gotten to enjoy working with students at a higher level. I feel like I'm always walking into the same, like, put this end of the clarinet in your mouth, don't like blow into it to make sound. Now blow more into it. Like I feel like I'm teaching the same lesson over and over.
Well, there's always going to be some of that, no matter what level you're working with. After you've done it enough times, you're always kind of teaching the same lessons. But for me, I don't mind, like, blow into this end, put your fingers here. I can do a little bit of that, and I've done it. And then I've taught, and then also like teaching like methods course as well. Like I've taught people how to teach people to do that, even like, and that's all fine. It's what it is for me is like the energy that it takes to teach. Yeah. And if you teach someone who is interested and engaged, and especially if they're invested, it's not such an energy suck. Like there's energy coming back at you. And it feels a lot different than when you're teaching someone who's like sitting there and like their entire aura is just, my mom is making me do this.
Yeah.
Or I have to do this because my band director said I have to do this and I want to be in the first clarinet section with my friend, or whatever dumb reason that's not authentic. And if you get, I have found if I have too much of that vibe in my teaching life, that it completely saps my energy and makes me miserable. So I just don't like to deal with students who aren't interested. And they can be amateurs, they can be kids, they can be, you know, younger pros, or even like pros just wanting another perspective or whatever. Like it doesn't matter so much like what level someone's at to me. It's all about their attitude and engagement. I just can't have my energy sapped like that.
Yeah.
I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's I think, yeah, the field of education in general, like you're taking off your shirt in a room full of mosquitoes. You're like, it's like who's gonna be the one mosquito to finally end it all. I mean, but in turn, like a lot of the career educators I talk to, like we try to find your ways. Like, I mean, some of those kids, like they're just kind of there, like they're kind of stuck there. You know, you do what you can, but you know, at least for me, I've put a lot of kind of hurdles to go through. Like, okay, how bad do you really want what I have to offer? You know, it could be time, like availability of time, you know, cost.
Sorry.
No worries. Like if you can't do this stuff by next week, yeah, it's usually not a lot. It's like that, you know, if you can't do this by next week, maybe we should think about who else you can study with. I don't like to turn people away, but it's that kind of like, if you really want it, like let's make an experience where you kind of have to earn your way in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I try not to bleed kids in turn, but
Right. Well, yeah, it's like it's just having standards, right? Like, and boundaries. Like, you know, like I just kind of realized after doing it, I realized I don't want to be like someone's overpaid babysitter. You know, I don't want to do that. It's fine. Like you can actually, I mean, it's a lot more lucrative than babysitting, and it's actually a lot easier than babysitting. But it just left me feeling tired and frustrated when I did it, you know? So I just sort of realized I would rather find some other way of making money than teaching, you know, lessons all day, every day.
yeah.
I figured out, you know, I think when I was in Chicago, I was teaching like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 students. And then I'd have like a student or two I would see in Vegas every month or two or whatever.
Mm.
And the people who found me there were always like the best young clarinet players who were really serious. And that's how they found me, because they saw, you know what I mean? Like they were looking for a way to sharpen their skills, you know, and they're like, I'm going to go play for, you know, so that they're either going to find me or they're going to find Marina at the university. And usually by the time they find me, they've already found Marina, because she's in town, even though she lives in Arizona, she's in town once a week for teaching, whereas I'm in town once a month at best. So anyway, I was very fortunate, I think, that I was able to do that, but financially, but also that I realized and accepted that I had this boundary of like having a limit of like, I can't, you know, I had, you know, not every student that I taught at Loyola was like incredibly interested, but it was, you know, most of them were doing it as like extra, you know, like I had like not a lot of music majors there. So they were at least no matter what their level, they were at least interested, and like I taught amateurs by the end at University of Chicago. I mean, I had some students who were good, like current students at the university who were good players over the years too. But at the end I had 3 adult amateurs. One of them had a music degree from U of I, but it wasn't, it was never about like, this person's good, this person sucks, this person's talented, this person's not, so much as like, are you actually interested in this? Because I've invested my entire life into this. And if you can't match some small amount of that investment of mine, mm-hmm. then no matter what you pay me, my time really is worth more than that.
Yeah, certainly. If you're going to directly trade your time, their time together. One thing I've seen, well, I'm sure you've seen it too in other avenues, but the whole e-learning world, mm-hmm. I've had to facilitate rooms where, kids are on their computers for distance learning, but it made me think a lot more about what can I offer as far as music or like the martial arts school, as far as, pre-recorded e-learning. Because the way I see it, like, yeah, if you're going to get a mix of these people who are either encouraging or suck the life out of you, why not have a resource that, like a general resource, and it could be like another barrier to entry as well. Like here's like an hour of fundamentals that I start with every student, like regardless
right.
of level. And then if you like what I have to say after that, and you're not going to suck my soul out, maybe we can have a private lesson together, something like, I don't know, like that kind of, I guess passive income type learning, as additional barrier to entry. Because like I agree. Like I hate teaching people who feel like it comes off as an inconvenience to them, and it's soul sucking. But at the same time, I don't want, like, at some level they needed some help. So like I don't want to deny people help either, if they're looking, if at some level they're looking for it. So
some people are capable of being inspired, and I don't want to shortchange that possibility mm-hmm. in what I'm saying. But I've found that a lot of times when you have someone who doesn't seem to care, you might see the light come on in the moment, but it almost always will go back out. It's like that they have to be able to light their own fire to some degree. So if it takes more than if it takes more than an occasional prodding from you, then it's for me personally, it's like, it's probably not going to work out. The relationship's probably not going to work out.
Yeah. Makes sense. I don't know. And if you, that said, if you want to record, like, Professor Cory's, 100% awesome, clarinet pedagogy video of Doom, we could do that. And it's like, just have it as a resource for you in the future. We've jumped kind of all over the map. That's good. I think it's a good cross section of your value. We hinted at it a little bit, but what else do you do? I mean, there's the clarinet stuff. You're a dad. You mentioned sourdough. Actually, I reminded myself, where are you getting your starter? Like, are you doing the whole like natural thing? You like try to get it from where you are, or have you, like I've seen people selling little vials of starter online. Like, what's some of the stuff you've played around with for that?
Well, I was, it was a big pandemic trend, obviously, last spring. So in Walnut Creek, I was walking around and we lived in this, it's basically a cul-de-sac. It's more like a like a lowercase f shape, but it's same idea. And we walked out of the community and crossed the street, and like literally I've been talking about it, and literally like hanging from a telephone pole was a box stacked with like little plastic takeout cups with filled with these cups full of starter, and then like a sheet of paper explaining the starter. And I didn't grab any, and like at the time, because we were going for a walk, and it was warm, and I was like, I don't know, and like I was a little sketched out. I was like, and then later on, I decided to go for it when it went back up, and I found out we found out that like there was a whole article in it in the San Francisco Chronicle, and people were calling this guy the Phantom Baker, right?
That's awesome.
And people were like driving out from like hour and a half away when word traveled to like grab some of the sourdough starter, because this starter he got from a friend in Napa in like 99, who got it from like their dad, and like their dad got it from somebody, and like ultimately this sourdough starter is 150 years old, and like gold prospectors took it like in their belt satchel to Yukon.
Wow.
And it made it back to San Francisco. So I actually have like a vintage like San Francisco sourdough starter, and it just so happened that this guy was my neighbor.
Man. Well, that's a fortunate turn. At least if you're into,
yeah.
Man.
I mean, it's also, sourdough is a thing in San Francisco as well. So
yeah,
right, it's at the right time for sure. So sourdough, and I mentioned, I started playing disc golf a couple months ago.
Is that just around or?
Well, there's the Golden Gate Park. My son's preschool is like a outdoor forest play school in Golden Gate Park, and we have pretty gnarly street cleaning situation around here. And Tuesday morning is really rough. So from 8 to 10, it's very hard to find a parking spot. So I'll usually just stay and like go a little further down in Golden Gate Park. They have a really great disc golf course in the park.
So you said it's a forest preschool.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does that mean? Like it's just out, like just a patch of woods. I've actually heard of this type of idea from, I think, Germany. That it was something like that. Like you let the kids kind of out and explore, and like the learning takes place kind of like in a natural setting. So it's one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fascinating. I didn't think that had made it to the US. Are there more of them?
There's 3 or 4 at Golden Gate Park, and then there's more in the Presidio area that I've seen.
Wow.
So, yeah, there's several in San Francisco.
I'll put maybe you can send me the link to that. I'm actually kind of curious. I'll put it in the show notes too, because that was something it struck me as a good idea. But I didn't think it would make it here to the US anytime soon. Have you been having a good experience with them?
Yeah, no, it's been great. He's like, on the weekend in the morning, he's like, let's go outside. I'm like, yes. Because actually, since you asked, hiking is one of my favorite activities.
Nice.
I love going for hikes. So I'll go up to Marin a lot and go hiking. And we just went to Sonoma County for the weekend, my wife and I, and grandma's in town. We did some hiking and hanging out there, and a lot of stuff on the peninsula and in the East Bay. And I've hiked Mount Diablo from the bottom to the top, which is kind of intense.
Yeah, that side of the country seems like it'd be great for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the weather's good too.
I need to get out that side of the. I don't think I've been. I think the furthest I've been is Wyoming now at this point. not counting a brief layover at the Las Vegas airport on my way back from Asia, I think. Um, I remember being mystified at seeing coin coin machines just in the terminal all over the place.
Yeah, that's Vegas. Once you're at the airport, you're there.
Oh man. All right. I'll start tapering it off here. Kind of let you go. But what's what are some books or media, shows, movies, whatever that you're enjoying right now?
Let's see. Well, we just watched the entire Marvel movie, like was it MCU, the Marvel
MCU?
Cinematic Universe?
Just in like one sitting?
No, we have a child, so no, definitely. No, over the course of I don't know, 2 months maybe, we had watched like all the Netflix Marvel stuff. Excuse me, and my wife used to work as a publicist in film, so we had watched up through whatever comes before Guardians of the Galaxy. So we were really far behind. But we just started over and we watched everything like not in the order that it came out, but in chronological order.
I've heard of that. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm,
So that
I'm
was
similarly behind. I'm trying to figure out which way I want to do it, by release or by time. But
it's a time-sucking project. It takes a lot of time. So we did that, and WandaVision was what kind of set us off, because I'm like, who the heck are these people? Right. I don't even know who people are, because I stopped watching MCU stuff like a decade ago. So I just had a lot to catch up on. And then Falcon and Winter Soldier just came out. So a lot of Marvel stuff lately, I guess. And then in terms of, I'm actually doing a program right now called The Artist's Way with Julia Cameron. And it's like with a group of, it's mostly musicians. And every week you read a chapter, and there's like a workbook, and it's all about like recovering your innate sense of creativity and letting go of any blockages, and like it's interesting. So that's kind of where like what I've been reading through and working on, and part of that practice is writing every morning, just like stream of consciousness. So I've been doing that. I also revisited I'm not quite done with it. I've been like very, very slowly reading through it, very meditatively, as it were, a book about When Things Fall Apart by, I can see her face and I can't, it's called When Things Fall Apart. I can't remember the author's name offhand, but it'll pop into my head in like 2 minutes. It's a book about meditation and about like getting through difficult times in life that I read like 15 years ago. Pema Chodron. And yeah, I've been reading through that. And that's, I mean, I was actually thinking, like, once I get through this Artist's Way program, that I would like to open a novel again. So if you have any suggestions, I think the last novel I read was Cavalier and Clay.
I can think of several, but I don't. Perhaps they're not appropriate for stating publicly.
You can text me, sure. No, I think Cavalier and Clay, and that was last year. And then like last fall, we had to move, we had to find a place to live, we had to pack up, blah blah blah. So
there was one point I tried to contact you, and it sounded like you were literally running from fire. It was
the fires out here were really bad last year. It was not a pleasant experience, like late summertime, early fall. There were a couple of months where it was pretty miserable. It was like, we didn't want to go outside because there was so much smoke. So we're hoping, we definitely didn't get enough rain this year. We're just hoping that, last year there was a thunderstorm and it started the fires like really early in the season, like
Mm.
late July, early August. But they, that was the first thunderstorm in 17 years or something. So it's not typical for them to get a thunderstorm here. But it doesn't rain for months and months. So if you get a thunderstorm, like that's a big problem.
Yeah.
um, and with climate change, the fog belt along the coast and from central California up to southern Oregon has not been quite as active as it once was, in addition to lower rainfall levels and snowfall levels up in the Sierras east of here. So, it's a concern, but anyway, last year was the worst year ever as far as recorded history goes. And they had I don't know, something like 5 or 6 of the 10 largest fires they've ever recorded in state history. So, with any luck, that'll be the only time that we ever experience anything quite as bad as that.
Yeah. Well, here's hoping. All right. One more heavy one. Maybe. What's something that you used to believe that you don't believe anymore?
Oh man.
And I'll leave the level of juiciness up to you. It doesn't. You don't have to put yourself super out there, but
that it's too late.
Hmm.
I don't believe that it's too late. And by that, I mean specifically to change anything about your life. And that can be as simple as your daily routine, or it can be, a cycle of abuse, or it could be your career, or, it could be to get on the audition circuit for orchestras in a serious, meaningful way. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be some kind of a recovery from something, injury, or it doesn't matter. It's not. I used to constantly tell myself it's too late for that, or it's too late for this, or always make that excuse of I'm getting too old for that, or I think 99 times out of 100 that is absolutely not true, and we just tell ourselves that out of fear. So it's not too late. That's something that I definitely believe that I did not believe before.
Awesome. That's a great lesson. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have? We've went through a lot.
I was gonna say, Frank, it's been like an hour and a half. I don't know, man. I think you've asked a lot of questions. I don't know.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'll put your info in the show notes. Is there anything you wanted to mention before we cut out? I don't know. Things are just getting fired up again. But any performances, projects, anything you wanna mention?
I think it's June 24th. I'm on a board for a conductorless chamber orchestra in Chicago that we've been working on this for years. And then, the pandemic did what it does. And it's too bad because we were really close to launching officially. We'd done some small, private events with some of the core players. And we had some funds raised, and we'd finally built a really fantastic board, and diverse in age and other representations. And I was, done a lot of workshopping, and it's been an endless amount of work. But anyway, we decided that the way we would pivot in the pandemic would be to build a portable stage and do a larger chamber works on this portable stage. So we have confirmed June 24th, I believe. I didn't put it in my calendar foolishly. June 24th to play on Fulton Street Market.
Okay.
In partnership with Let Us Entertain You. and that's going to be, open air, like with all the restaurant row right there, and in the West Loop. And then we're finalizing stuff with the city to do a performance in a park space as well with the same program. And then probably a private, we have like a for sure spot in the Gold Coast, like in a cul-de-sac that we could do a private performance, but we're looking to find like a donor to purchase, like we do a buy one, give one model. So if they, pay the set price, then that also funds the park performance. I mean, we're doing the park performance no matter what, but, we're looking for that sort of thing. So obviously it's been a little hard for me to do with a pandemic and being, 2,000 miles away. I was actually the chairman when I left. So it's a challenge. But anyway, we're launching that in June 24th, and it should be really great. We're doing programming is almost finalized. We have a meeting set for this week, I think, to finalize that. And it'll be a good mix of some classics and some newer stuff and some really fantastic artists. So I feel like I should plug that. Back in Chicago, I will not personally be there. Unfortunately, I have to be at a wedding that weekend.
It's good to catch up with you. Maybe next time it won't be like several years in between conversations, but your June you said June, right? Late June?
June 24th, yeah.
All right. Is there a name for this project or event?
Big Shoulders Ensemble.
Big Shoulders Ensemble. That makes sense. Nice. Well, yeah, be on the lookout for that. Thank you guys for listening, whoever's out there, my tens of listeners, and growing, hopefully. But thanks again, Cory. I'll see you soon.
Pleasure, Frank. Nice to catch up with you.
Mark Nuccio.